Okay, are we now live?
Yes, ma'am, we're live.
All right, welcome everyone. This is the House of Delegates Rules and Executive Nominations Committee. This is a public hearing. Today is Monday, the 16th of March, and we have several bills that are going to be under a public hearing. After the bill hearing, we will take a quick vote on re-referrals for a number of bills that have been accepted by the committees. So with that, let us begin. Is Delegate Vogel available?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here.
Okay, Delegate Vogel, you're up first, so please present your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Rules Committee, here with House Bill 1099, which would set up a constitutional amendment on term limits. I want to be very clear about what this bill is not. In the past, term limits has been introduced in this body as a way to purge sitting members from the legislature, those that have been serving over a certain period of time. The way this bill is drafted is a slightly more innovative approach, which would not make that happen. And second, this is not an effort to demean or degrade the service of those who have served in this legislature for a very long time. I know there are many of you on this committee who have had very distinguished service in the legislature, and this by no means is an effort to demean or degrade that service. So I want to make that very clear right at the top. This approach to term limits came from a conversation that I had with a constituent. An overwhelming majority of Marylanders believe that there should be term limits for legislators, just as there are for the governor, for county council members, for mayors across the state. And this constituent of mine, we were talking about it, and I expressed concern that there would ever be a way to pass term limits in which legislators would be self-limiting how long they can be in office. So then she suggested, why don't you just delay the implementation, which I actually think makes quite a bit of sense. So this bill as drafted would enact term limits for legislators starting in 2030 after the 2030 election. And everyone would be grandfathered in. So if you've been serving 20 years in 2030, you will still get an additional 16 years. If you're elected for the first time in 2030, you would still get 16 years. And this would be a constitutional amendment, so it would go to the voters for referendum. With that, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 1099 and happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Please use the icon, the raise hand device, if you have any questions. I don't see any. If you have raised your hand and I don't see you, please speak up. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we'll move on to the witnesses. We have Bruce Bariano. Mr. Bariano, you are muted. Mr. Bariano, you're on mute.
There we go.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now I can. Thank
Okay, I
you.
apologize.
Go ahead.
For the record,
You have
Bruce.
2 minutes.
For the record, Bruce Bariano. I'm here as an individual citizen. Very strong opposition to this legislation. You might ask, why am I testifying? I had the distinct honor and privilege and honor to work for 2 Senate presidents, and during that time period, also worked for the speakers of the House because they did not have professional staff at that time. That being said, and I'm not saying other lobbyists don't have this, but I grew extremely fond and very strongly about the state legislature. I want it to be strong. I want it to be effective. I want it to have the knowledge and the wisdom as much as it can have. Term limitations undercuts that. There is term limitations. It's called the voters of the state of Maryland. And if an individual legislator, him or her, want to put their own limitations, they can tell that to the public and say, if you elect me, I'm only going to run for 2 terms. I'm only going to serve for 2 terms. But to blanketly tell all the legislators you can only serve for a short period of time, you are weakening, very respectfully, the structure, the knowledge, the experience, the maturity of the legislature in terms of subject specific authority and knowledge of legislators, which other legislators rely on. And I just think it's a very bad idea, and it should be left to the individual legislator. Ironically, the sponsor of the bill in his first term, I think his second year, opted to run for the Congress of the United States. So I guess he was thinking of term limiting himself at that time. But it should be up to the individual legislator. And the public can decide. They're smart enough. But we lose valuable experience and knowledge by term limitations. I would urge an unfavorable report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, the next witness is Anita Beaterbill. Is the witness here?
I do not see her, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to Leland Bradshaw. Is he here? Or is Leland Bradshaw here in the room?
I am here.
Please give your testimony. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Lee Bradshaw, Maryland Forward Party, calling in from Brandywine, Maryland. We support HB 1099 because it aligns with Maryland's historical and constitutional commitment to have a citizen legislatures in its General Assembly. The bill provides a constitutional referendum on term limits of 4 terms, 16 years in the General Assembly, irrespective of chamber. 16 years is a generation of service. This length may not be perfect for everyone, but 16 years in the Maryland General Assembly strikes an appropriate balance between our state's commitment to citizen governance and allowing legislatures to gain valuable experience for the constituents and share that experience. The work of legislation is challenging. Maryland Forward Party thanks each of the General Assembly members for their service to their communities and to the state. Each of you, when you were elected, had new, fresh ideas on how to represent your communities. As you have worked in the legislature, you have learned how to implement those ideas into policy and become a better advocate for your constituents. There are entire generations of future leaders who have good ideas and are capable of becoming effective advocates for their communities as well. This constitutional amendment would mandate periodic turnover to keep those ideas in the General Assembly innovative, limiting bureaucratic capture and complacency while preserving a strong core of experienced leaders. Finally, given the constitutional nature of this bill and the required citizen referendum, Maryland Forward Party supports the right of the people of the state to decide for themselves whether 16-year term limits for the General Assembly are an appropriate measure. Letting us choose how the legislature is constituted is fundamental to the principle of self-governance, and we urge the committee to provide a favorable report on HB 99. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1099. Next up is House Bill 56, Delegate Boucher.
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks for accommodating us with this virtual meeting with the storm coming. It was so kind of you. For the record, I'm Delegate Christopher Eric Boucher, District 5, representing Carroll and Frederick counties. This is my last bill of my last term, so it's special. Let's hope it's historical. It's HB 56. This bill addresses a political science conundrum that has faced our nation since 1800, and that is the disenfranchising of voters who are not members of the majority party after every census when the redistricting takes place. What this bill does is turns the redistricting process completely over to our citizens, and that's a pretty radical concept, but it's not when you think about the fact that the entire premise of our nation is citizen sovereignty over us, the politicians. And what I discovered when I sued the state to the Supreme Court in 2012 was that technically the citizens of Maryland or any other state are not truly sovereign over their government because the politicians, us, the legislators, draw our own districts. So what this does is it turns the authority over to the citizens to draw our districts after every census. 188 citizens will be elected statewide, a portion according to their overall population of each county, and then to be elected on a nonpartisan ballot. These individuals would be restricted from being an existing elected official, so we wouldn't be able to appoint our cronies or friends to draw our districts for us, and that these citizens, once elected, would have hearings throughout their counties and then come together in convention, and this convention of 188 citizens, our constituents, would draw our districts for us, and they'd be prohibited from running for that seat for one election cycle. So I think this would solve the conundrum we have by taking the responsibility out of our hands and truly making the citizens sovereign over the redistricting process. I think this is a critical issue coming up because the next term of office comes in will be right in front of the redistricting. I truly hope that this committee finds a way to do this. After all, we just faced a tremendous controversy over the congressional redistricting, which hasn't gone anywhere. So in the long term, I think this solves a tremendous problem for us and takes the responsibility out of our hands and turns it completely over to the people. And with that, I hope you can give me a favorable vote and get this to the floor. And it'd be wonderful to see this bill go over to the Senate and start even more controversy over there. So bless all of you for your service this year. And it's been a tremendous honor serving with you. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the sponsor? I don't see anybody hand raised. If you want to, please speak up if you want to ask a question. If not, then we will move on to Mr. Leland Bradshaw.
Thank you very
Go
Yes,
ahead.
ma'am. Lee Bradshaw again, Maryland Forward Party. No tornadoes in Brandywine yet. I think we'll get them first. We'll let you know. We support HB 56 because we believe that gerrymandering is the root cause of dysfunction in Congress, which is daily manifest in its inability to function or even assert itself as a co-equal branch under the Constitution. Gerrymandering is also a bad thing in any legislative body. It empowers parties rather than voters. It traps the legislator, making them beholden to the minority of the constituents that voted in the primary for them. It institutionalizes one-party rule. It violates the letter and the spirit of free and fair elections. It contributes to the perception by some that the system is rigged, so there's no point in voting, and in that sense, it's effectively voter suppression. We know we're not immune to gerrymandering. We have a history of it, and look what we just tried to do with HB 488. We support independent districting commissions. 11 states use commissions for congressional districting. 16 states use them for legislative redistricting. Some commissions are composed of politicians, non-politicians. Some are composed of non-politicians, and some are hybrids. HB 482, Delegate Buckles' bill introduced earlier in the session, was hybrid, leaning towards politicians. We would have been fine with that too. HB 56 proposes something entirely different, a citizens' legislative and congressional redistricting and apportionment convention. Citizens' conventions are a feature in the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution's framers obviously saw a need, on occasion, for more direct democracy than is provided through state legislatures, since they required that the Constitution itself be ratified by conventions of citizens in each state rather than by legislatures. HB 56 still provides for input by the legislature in the form of an up or down vote and the ability to challenge reality.
Your time has expired, Mr. Bradshaw. Would you like to summarize one sentence?
No, we support direct democracy whenever possible, and we support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 56. We will now move to House Bill 1413. Delegate Hornberger. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee for working with these weather conditions, and arranging for Zoom means a lot to us. Delegate Hornberger here on behalf of HB 1413, which is a very old idea, which is retrocession. And this deals with the District of Columbia, and this bill is a study to be taken place by the Maryland Department of Planning. What if I told you and the members of the committee that we had a chance to increase our population by roughly 750,000 high-income residents who are direct neighbors and in many instances direct descendants of Marylanders, to increase our land withholdings by 60 square miles, to gain back the commanders, which we all know and love, to bring back some buildings that we thought were going to be located here, such as the FBI, and the fact that we're already paying hundreds of millions of dollars to DC for infrastructure for metro and transportation initiatives. And the fact that, as I said at the beginning of this presentation, this isn't a new idea. In fact, it's 186 years old this year. When DC was created, it was a perfect diamond, and the lands that were located in Virginia, they decided that they did not want to be part of the District of Columbia, and they retroceded back out. So, with all that said, this bill would study the economic benefits, and I want to make clear that that is the main impetus for putting this bill in. I think there's a lot of synergies that could occur and a lot of benefits to us that include gaining a member of Congress in the U.S. House of Representatives. I have some witnesses here that are going to add additional detail and clarity, but we'd love to take questions. And again, we feel that this may be a way to turn around our economic situation. The benefits that we historically received from the federal government are drastically changing, and this might be a good time to ponder and review this idea. We'll have to take any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the sponsor? If not, then we will move on to the next witness. Would be David Krukoff.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairperson Healy, and thank you to everyone on the Rules Committee for hearing my testimony this afternoon. My name is David Krukoff. I'm a third-generation Washingtonian, and I'm the founder and executive director of a 10-year-old nonprofit called Douglas County, Maryland. I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill 1413. Washington, D.C. merging into Maryland through a second retrocession can be discussed personally, legally, historically, politically, and economically. Personally, I've been advocating for D.C. voting rights since I was a high schooler. My advocacy shifted from 51st statehood to retrocession because I came to realize that we must not let ideology stand in the way of what is sensible. I am delighted to answer your detailed questions after our opening statements about how DC falling back into Maryland is politically empowering, historically significant, and legal, but let me focus on why the economics of the merger must be explored. Last year, Maryland faced a $3.3 billion deficit. To close the gap, $1.6 billion in new taxes and fees were approved. According to a report by the Department of Legislative Services Office of Policy Analysis on January 26 of this year, Maryland will face a $2.3 billion shortfall in fiscal year 2028, and this shortfall could increase to almost $4 billion by 2031. I believe the shortfall may be even worse. After all, our white-collar workforce, both private sector and government, is being cut in the interest of efficiency and due to the penetration of artificial intelligence into the way we all produce white-collar deliverables. Regarding being doged and AI'd, the District of Columbia sits in the same boat. In 2026, DC office buildings are being sold for 10 to 50 cents on the dollar. I know this not just because from articles I read in the Washington Business Journal or on CoStar News, but because I help owners and users and investors buy and sell commercial properties in DC, Maryland, Virginia for a living. I know the market.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the witness?
I have more to say, but okay.
Well, I understand, but we have a time limit on these, okay? Everybody has the same time limit. So if there are no questions, we will move on to the next witness, and that is John Forster. Mr. Forster, please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good afternoon. My name is John Forster, and I am the activities coordinator of the Committee for the Capital City. We are the original organization in Washington, D.C. that promoted the idea that the best solution for D.C. citizens to gain voting rights equal to those of all other Americans was for the city of Washington to be reunited with the state of Maryland. Most of us originally supported DC, but realized many years ago, that statehood for DC had the support of only one political party, while the idea of DC rejoining Maryland had not only bipartisan support, but pulled higher in national polls as the preferred solution to DC voters' lack of representation. The subject of this hearing is House Bill 1413, which proposes that the state of Maryland study the feasibility and potential economic impacts of retrocession of the current District of Columbia to Maryland, much like Arlington and Alexandria, once also a part of the District of Columbia, were successfully returned to Virginia. As a 50-year resident of the District of Columbia and a voting rights advocate, I strongly support this legislation. Research by the Committee for the Capital City found that DC residents have a higher per capita income than Marylanders. We also found out that DC residents have a higher percentage of college graduates than does Maryland. We concluded, therefore, that the return of the District of Columbia to Maryland would make Maryland richer and smarter, a goal we hope that we all share and that will be supported by the research this bill proposes. However, I should add, so Maryland doesn't feel too bad, Maryland is the number one state of per capita income, even though DC is higher.
Mr. Forster, you ended up on mute. I didn't mute you, but if you want to finish your thought
And
there.
the level of college graduates, but DC is number one. So by joining with Maryland, we think that Maryland would approach that number one position in both categories.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
the original idea for reunion with Maryland, believe it or not, came from the late Donald Schaefer. When he was mayor of Baltimore, he went to China on a trade mission and pointed out. And
Mr. Forster, this is fascinating. However, your time has expired.
Oh, yeah. It's not quite clear where Baltimore was.
I think
your time is up. Are there any questions for Mr. Forster? Would you like him to go on? If not, we'll definitely look at your written testimony as well.
Sorry, I didn't see my time was up.
Thank you so much. There are no questions, so we will now move on to John Page.
And thank you, Chair Healy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm John Page, a private individual residing for 25 years in Georgetown, testifying on HB 1413. My apartment is not the seat of the United States government. In my written testimony, I try and introduce the key facts behind my support for this bill. I think it might be useful to give you a brief timeline. Maryland was created as a state by a People's Convention, and that convention also stated its membership of the United States. Georgetown, where I live, was part of Maryland and a part of the original Montgomery County, and the United States Constitution was ratified by Georgetown's representative to the state legislature, William Dawkins. So Maryland's 1791 state legislature offered a session. That was accepted by the government, and that act is in my written submission. And I think that's important, and please read it, especially the part where the session is only pursuant to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Not all powers were ceded. In the subsequent state elections, folks from Georgetown showed up to vote, and they were denied. That denial was incorrect. In the year 2000, Adams versus Clinton, the Supreme Court affirmed that it was impossible for Congress to be Columbia's state legislature for the purpose of representation in Congress. I could go into a detailed argument, but the point is that the 10th Amendment preserved rights that are not reserved to the United States government. So those continue to reside with the state of Maryland. It's impossible for them to have been delegated to DC. In subsequent litigation that I personally brought, the courts ruled that Columbia itself, the land ceded by Maryland, could not be a separate state because Congress had not passed an Article 4 resolution admitting it as such. And to finish, the upshot is Columbia's inhabitants state for the purpose of representation in Congress is Maryland, and I'm ready and available for anybody at this hearing, whether in office or privately, to discuss the details. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, I thank you very much for taking the time. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 1413. Next, we'll go to House Bill 447, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you find my testimony fascinating as well. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. I respectfully submit this testimony in support of House Bill 447, which establishes in the Maryland Constitution the right of the people to hunt, fish, and harvest wildlife subject to reasonable regulation. This legislation reflects a conservation principle deeply rooted in American history. President Theodore Roosevelt, one of the nation's greatest conservationists, understood that responsible hunting and fishing are not threats to wildlife. They are essential tools for protecting it. Modern conservation policy continues to reflect this insight. Ethical, regulated hunting plays a central role in maintaining healthy wildlife populations and sustainable ecosystems. Across the United States, the North American model of wildlife conservation has demonstrated that hunters and anglers are among the most significant supporters of wildlife protection. Through license fees, conservation programs, and volunteer efforts, sportsmen have historically provided a large share of the funding and stewardship that sustain wildlife populations and habitat restoration. House Bill 447 recognizes this reality by affirming that hunting and fishing are legitimate and important tools for wildlife management. Wildlife populations must be actively managed to maintain ecological balance and protect habitat. Conservation science has long recognized that regulated harvest can be necessary to prevent overpopulation, habitat degradation, and ecosystem imbalance. This bill also protects an important cultural and economic tradition. Hunting and fishing connect Marylanders to the outdoors, strengthen rural communities, and help foster a conservation ethic among citizens. Organizations and conservation leaders inspired by Theodore Roosevelt emphasized that ensuring the access to these activities helps sustain public support for wildlife conservation and natural resource stewardship. Importantly, House 447 does not eliminate the state's ability to regulate hunting or fishing. Instead, it ensures that such regulations remain focused on sound wildlife management and public safety rather than an ideological opposition to lawful outdoor traditions. By embedding this right in the Constitution, the state provides a clear framework that protects conservation practices while preserving the authority of wildlife professionals to manage species responsibly. For generations, responsible hunters and anglers have helped build the most successful wildlife conservation system in the world. House Bill 447 simply recognizes that legacy and ensures that future generations of Marylanders will retain the opportunity to participate in the outdoor traditions that sustain both wildlife and our shared natural heritage. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to give House Bill 447 a favorable report.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 447. We will now move to the House Joint Resolutions, and we will start with Delegate Fair, House Joint Resolution 3. I believe that Delegate Fair is going to be represented by his staff person at this time. Would you please state your name for the record and present the testimony?
Chair Healy, Vice Chair Holmes, and members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Camila Reynolds Dominguez, Chief of Staff to Delegate Chris Fair, here to present HJ3 on his behalf. A resolution articulating and affirming the importance of curricula that include the diverse experiences of Maryland's communities. You have his written testimony, so I won't take up your time by reading it to you. But Delegate Fair did ask me to present this bill in his place, as he specifically wanted me to share my perspective on the bill with you as the oral testimony from his office. I'd like to underscore that his written testimony from his perspective as a gay Marylander has parallels with my own experience as a queer woman and as the daughter of a Puerto Rican immigrant, of having to seek out my own familial and community histories because I was never taught them in the classroom. Every year, there are multiple bills that seek to broaden the diversity and inclusivity of Maryland curricula, which speaks to the widespread desire that HJ3 represents among many Maryland communities to be better reflected in the classroom. Inclusion in classrooms and curricula leads to better learning outcomes, stronger feelings of belonging, and a clearer understanding of why our communities are the way they are today. Inclusive curriculum is necessary even when we have strong anti-discrimination laws, because simply passing a law that prohibits discrimination does not fix core problems of bias and misunderstanding. However, intentional engagement with history and culture that cultivates a deep appreciation for our state's diverse communities, in conjunction with strong anti-discrimination laws, will go a long way towards achieving the necessary changes in hearts and minds that are required to realize a society free from discrimination. That is why the Maryland State Education Association supports the resolution, why all of the chairs of Maryland's identity-based caucuses signed on to the exact same resolution last year, and why there are even more co-sponsors this year. One other point. HJ3 is especially important in the context of the coordinated, federally supported campaign to erase much of this history by labeling it as divisive or un-American, echoing some of the darker periods of our nation's history, like the McCarthy era, which spurred both the Red and Lavender scares, the latter of which targeted LGBTQ Americans as national security risks to be investigated, fired, barred from government employment, and harassed. I make an effort to be knowledgeable about the history of my communities, and though there were several congressional hearings and an executive order in place for 40 years, all prompted by the Lavender Scare, I only learned about it as archival research and popular culture have shed light on this period of government-sanctioned repression against LGBTQ Americans. And I can say the same thing about the history and contributions of Puerto Ricans, which, given the island status as a colonial territory of the United States, is American history. And yet curricula tends to be silent on Latino history and our struggles for civil and political rights as well. So why should the General Assembly pass this resolution and not a binding law? As a former member of the Ways and Means Education Subcommittee, Delegate Fair is particularly sensitive to issues of local control when it comes to these matters. Rather than mandating curriculum changes, he believes the more pragmatic approach is to pass this resolution affirming the General Assembly's intent. That way, we do not step on the toes of local professionals who know their communities best, while still clearly articulating the legislature's position and sending a message to Maryland students that they and their histories belong in our classrooms and curricula. For these reasons, we urge the committee to refer HJ3 to the full House of Delegates favorably so the body can send a clear message of inclusion and belonging to all of Maryland students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness? Speaking on behalf of the sponsor. I see, let's see. No, I see no one. We'll move on to witness Lauren Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lauren Lamb, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland State Education Association, which represents 76,000 public school educators across the state. MSCA supports this resolution's affirmation that all students deserve an education that accurately reflects history, including the experiences and contributions of groups that have experienced discrimination. When students grapple honestly with history, they're better prepared to understand the roots of real-world issues and work toward a better future. A historically accurate education teaches students to think critically about the world around them and learn from the past. And a multicultural education helps students develop awareness, understanding, and respect for all. We appreciate that this resolution is not a specific curriculum mandate. Instead, it is a set of principles that can guide how the State Board of Education makes decisions about curriculum standards. It is our hope that this resolution will prompt a holistic review to evaluate and update state curriculum standards with the input of educators, families, and members of underrecognized communities. We unequivocally believe that diversity makes us stronger, and we urge the committee to issue a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Joint Resolution 3. We will now go to House Joint Resolution 8 with Delegate White Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the House Rules and Executive Nominations Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Jennifer White Holland, and I appreciate the opportunity to present House Joint Resolution 8, Apology and Acknowledgement of the State's Responsibility in Racial Terror Lynchings for your consideration. In 2019, the Maryland General Assembly, in fact, both chambers unanimously voted to establish the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And in 2023, for the bill that I was pleased to introduce, extended the commission's termination date to June 30th, 2026, and its deadline to submit its final report to December 1st, 2025. Both bills, again, were voted unanimously in both chambers. And the commission was charged to hold public regional hearings in areas where a lynching of an African American by a white mob has been documented, receive recommendations from the public, including families and communities affected by lynching, for addressing, engaging, and reconciling affected families and communities, as well as making recommendations for addressing the legacy of lynching that are rooted in the spirit of restorative justice. I would like to express my gratitude to the Commission for its outstanding work since its inception and delivering its final report last December, where 38 victims were identified of racial terror lynchings, which was defined as the unlawful killing of an African American by white mob violence, often with the apparent complicity of state and local officials intended to incite racial terror and subservience to white supremacy across the state of Maryland. We are grateful for the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission's work and for the descendants of victims, witnesses, and other members of the public who shared their stories about the hurt, harm, and impact it has had on their lives and their community. The report is extensive and offers 84 policy recommendations for repair and reconciliation. House Joint Resolution 8 is one of those recommendations and sees it as a first step our state must take to issue an apology and acknowledge the state's complicity and negligence in allowing the perpetration of acts of racial terror lynching, as well as take reparative actions as recommended by the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. As our nation faces the erasure of African American history, it is necessary for our state to take the first step to apologize and acknowledge the state's role in upholding the structure of racial violence, which continues to manifest today in the health disparities we experience, the mass incarceration of African Americans, land loss, and economic inequities. We must grapple with the structures that made racial terror lynchings possible, learn from our past, and disrupt this structure to build a better future based in truth, healing, and reconciliation. I respectfully request a favorable report. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we will move on to witnesses. David I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Please identify yourself for the record. David Fakunle?
It's pronounced Fakunle.
Okay, thank you so much. I apologize.
He
Please go
was
ahead.
here, Madam Chair, but he has left.
Oh, he just acknowledged himself, right? Oh, no, that's the next one. Nicholas Creary.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. Thank you also, Delegate White Holland, for the courage to introduce this resolution. I've anticipated this moment since I approached Speaker Pena-Melnick to establish the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This bill is the beginning of the work. Recommendations for rate development is the first step to provide some accountability for the state's simultaneous complicity in perpetrating and dereliction of duty in allowing these crimes to occur. We will never achieve justice for the men and boys who were murdered, or for their families, or for their communities that were terrorized and traumatized. And so our recommendations are designed to hold state, county, and local communities accountable for their actions. Brian Stevenson, the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, stated that truth and reconciliation must be sequential. That is, we must acknowledge our recommendations are designed to hold state, county, and
You're having some technical problems.
okay.
We're not getting all your information. I just continue, please.
Okay, thank you. We must acknowledge the truth of the past before there can be any meaningful reconciliation between perpetrators and the people that they've harmed. This apology, therefore, is a necessary first step in the reconciliation process. There is a common misperception that equates reparations exclusively with monetary compensation. Reparations, however, encompass far more, including symbolic measures such as this apology. The General Assembly failed to pass anti-lynching legislation in 1898 following the lynching of William Andrews, and again in 1933 following the murder of George Armwood. Including Armwood, the General Assembly's failure in 1898 contributed to the deaths of 10 victims of racial terror lynching. You now have the opportunity to do the right thing and acknowledge the state's responsibility. And so I strongly urge a favorable report on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, the next witness is Michelle Coles.
Hello. Thank you, Delegate. Oh, should I start?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry, hold on one second. Thank you, Delegate White Holland, for introducing this joint resolution. I am a commissioner on the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission and a civil rights attorney formerly with the U.S. Department of Justice. I strongly support HJ8, which apologizes for Maryland's role in racial terror lynchings. Maryland has a unique opportunity to set a precedent for truth and justice, which we hope other states will follow. The Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission documented 38 cases of known racial terror lynchings of Black men and boys that took place in Maryland between 1854 and 1933. And in each case, Black people's constitutional rights were violated. The 14th Amendment became a ratified part of the U.S. Constitution in 1868 and provided that no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny any person the equal protection of the laws. But each of these 38 people were denied their life without due process, and by failing to hold the people who lynched them accountable, both lynching victims and Black community members were denied equal protection under the law. Further, these lynchings took place in an environment that dehumanized Black people as a whole, as a continuation of how Black people were dehumanized during slavery, and in many cases are still dehumanized today. Even today in Maryland, Black people are still disproportionately killed by the police, the most likely victim of hate crimes, the most wrongly convicted, and disproportionately incarcerated. As with lynchings, in many such instances, Black people's due process rights are violated. The people that harmed them are not held to account, and there's state complicity at play. By closely examining the legacy of racial terror lynchings, the through lines become clear. It is past time to fully embrace the mandates of the 14th Amendment and make amends for where we've fallen short. It's a fallacy to think time alone will heal these wounds. This apology is an important first step, and we hope not the last, in shaping a more just and equitable future by having Maryland atone for its past and recognize how the legacy of racial terror lynchings continues to impact us today. Thank you for your time. I respectfully ask for a favorable report on HJ8.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on House Joint Resolution 8. We'll now go to House Joint Resolution 2. Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Chair Healy, Vice Chair Holmes, and members of the Rules and Executive Nomination Committee. This is Delegate Chao. Today I'm presenting HJ 0002 to respectfully and request for your favorable report. This resolution urges the U.S. Congress to pass the National Infrastructure Bank Act, which would create a $5 trillion bank to help finance infrastructure projects, including repairing existing infrastructure and building new projects across the country. The concept of a national infrastructure bank is not new. The United States had used similar models before. For example, Alexander Hamilton, our first Secretary of the Treasury, established of the first Bank of the United States in 1791 to stabilize the young nation's financial system and to support economic development. Later, the Second Bank of the United States and institutions such as Reconstruction Finance Corporation during the New Deal helped finance railroads, industry, and major infrastructure projects that powered Americans' growth. Many other countries now continue to use national development banks today. For example, Germany's KfW Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, and China's development banks have financed large-scale infrastructure, energy, housing, and industry projects that support long-term economic growth. These institutions demonstrate how public banking models can mobilize
Delegate Wu, are you finished? You went on mute, I think. Delegate Wu? Maybe he froze.
It looks like he's frozen, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, that's a technical problem. I'm sorry, Delegate Wu. If maybe we could come back to you after the next bill. I really want to give you a chance to finish what you started to say. So with that, we'll take a break from. Well, we'll finish the testimony on this bill, and then maybe by the end of it, you'll have a chance to come back. So we'll go on to the witnesses. Angela Vullo.
Yes, hello. I'm testifying in support of HJ 002. I wanted to thank Delegate Wu for introducing this historic piece of legislation. As you'll hear, this is to create a $5 trillion national infrastructure bank. I wanted to let you know that there is growing support for this policy throughout the nation from the grassroots and from the U.S. Congress. We now have 58 sponsors. 30 legislatures, state legislatures have put in resolutions, either passed or introduced. The Democratic National Committee has endorsed, the National Federation of Democratic Women, the National Association of Counties, and many, many more. What this represents is an indication that we urgently need to change economic policy to a policy that works for the American people and not just the wealthy bankers. Also, I want to say that this would create 20 million high-wage jobs. So the idea here is to put America to work to make the economy work for you. The economy is not working for everybody, and people are insisting that we primarily as Democrats have a positive policy to return the country back to the American people and back to the working class. I really urge you to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also on, just so you know. You don't have to call on Rosenblatt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did.
You don't have to call me. You can go to Delegate Wu. I think he's now back on.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying you don't want to testify at this time?
I do. I'm happy to, but I thought maybe Alfecca and then myself.
Okay. Well, as long as you're on there right this minute.
Okay, fine.
Why don't we go to you?
testify.
I thought you were not even on the call at all. So
Not a
I'm glad.
problem.
Okay.
No, it's not a problem. Okay, Stuart Rosenblatt. I work also with the Coalition for a National Infrastructure Bank. I did live in Maryland for 10 years, both Baltimore and Baltimore County, go there regularly. We were just in Annapolis last week meeting with dozens of members of the legislature in support of this. Briefly, the resolution speaks to a bill in Congress that would create a $5 trillion public bank to invest in infrastructure and actually build everything that we need. And it would also is the only financing mechanism that'll finance all of the bridges that need to be built in Maryland kiss goodbye the Key Bridge, kiss goodbye the Bay Bridge, kiss goodbye the American Legion Bridge. There's no money for it. I mean, look, many members in Maryland believe it's not their prerogative to tell Congress what to do. I understand it. These are not normal times. Let's everybody be, honest. Congress is telling you what to do. The Biden infrastructure law is expiring right now. There is already a discussion that the reauthorization for everything is going to be cut. Why? No money. The feds are running a $2 trillion deficit. The interest payment is now 14% of the budget, and Congress is already telling you good luck. And the president is clawing back money for infrastructure left and right. So if you think you're getting money from Washington for the Key Bridge, I would, advise you to seek psychiatric help. This is the only institution that can actually do it. So I'm asking you to change your normal way of doing things. We're urging you to tell Congress what to do. Now, this is how all 58 sponsors have been gotten on the bill, and this number is growing. So
Okay.
please help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go back to Delegate Wu so he can finish his statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I tried to get it back. It's just staying there. So, and I'll be quick. So this is the second time this resolution has been introduced in the Maryland General Assembly. As you know, this resolution does not require Maryland to take on new obligations, but it simply affirms our support for the creation of this bank and encouraging more members of Maryland congressional delegation to sponsor and support this legislation, help paving stronger future for our country. However, if the National Infrastructure Bank does not move forward, I would encourage us to explore creation an Eastern State Infrastructure Bank, states along the East Coast, from Maine to New Hampshire to Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, together with the District of Columbia and Pennsylvania, could collaborate to establish a multi-state infrastructure financing institution to support a transformative and regional projects, including a true high-speed rail network connecting the entire Eastern Corridor. So we must dream about a better future and build the infrastructure that makes that future possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for the sponsor? If not, then I'm going to go to the last witness on this bill, and that is Alfeka Mutarde.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm an economist with the Coalition for a National Infrastructure Bank, speaking in favor of HJ 0002. I'd like to expand on what's already been said by talking about two things. First of all, the state of the U.S. economy is not good. We could be slipping into a recession. We've had a lot of economic impacts on the state of Maryland from the cutbacks in the federal government and furloughing of workers. Many working day Marylanders are really suffering, dealing with affordability issues and with insecure jobs and high costs of housing. The NIB will help, the National Infrastructure Bank will help in all of these areas by creating 20 million new great paying family sustaining wage jobs in your state, build infrastructure that's needed by everyone, and improve the economy. Lastly, I would point out, Stu did that the federal budget has no money. The Maryland state budget is experiencing difficulties. The way the NIB helps with your economy is by doubling GDP growth, which will bring you in new tax revenues. And it will explicitly address things that Maryland needs. You've got a budget shortfall, you've got lackluster economic growth, but this will address everything in your report card for the state: roads, bridges, drinking wastewater systems, water service lines, energy power outages, rebuilding the Port of Baltimore, and especially addressing all of your bridge problems. All of that will be covered by the National Infrastructure Bank. And this is the only source of funding that will really boost your economy and repair your infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Joint Resolution 2, and we'll go to the last resolution of the day, Delegate Pepe.
Thank you.
House
Madam
Joint
Chair.
Resolution 1.
Yep, HJ1. Thank you, Madam Chair, and to my colleagues on the committee. Appreciate your time. So this is HJ1, and it's a resolution dealing with Charlie Kirk. So on September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while speaking to a group of college students at Utah Valley University. Kirk is known for engaging in debates, sometimes controversially, with college students of all political backgrounds. He was also the founder of Turning Point USA. Importance of the bill is that within the last year, political violence has been on the rise. In 2023, just in Congress alone, the U.S. Capitol Police investigated 8,008 threats made towards members of Congress, their families, and staff. This number rose to 9,474 in 2024 and 14,938 in 2025. Violence in the last year, in October, threats were made to President Bill Ferguson here in Maryland and to Speaker Adrian Jones. And by the way, we publicly condemned those acts of violence as well. In June, Minnesota House Democrat Caucus Leader Hortman and her husband were assassinated in their homes. Senator John Hoffman and his wife were also shot, but fortunately survived. In April, arson was committed at the Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence. These cases do not actually account for all of these ordinary citizens that have been targeted for political violence as well. So here's what the resolution does. This resolution is verbatim the resolution that was introduced in the U.S. House of Representatives that passed. It's also similar to the resolution that passed in the U.S. Senate unanimously. And I want to point out that several of our Democrat members here in Maryland, 8 of the 10, all supported it verbatim. So the resolution that you're seeing in front of you is the mere copy of the resolution, minus the fact that it's reflected here in Maryland versus the U.S. Congress, but it's a mere copy of what was introduced and passed in the United States House of Representatives and Senate, including by members of our own federal delegation. I want to point out Hakeem Jeffries, Representative Clark, the minority whip, minority caucus chair, they all voted for the resolution. So here's what the resolution says, or the resolution says. It condemns the assassination. It calls upon leaders to condemn all forms of political violence, regardless of political ideology. It calls upon people to recommit to peaceful debate and respect one another. There has been other resolutions introduced in other states, Arizona, Maine, all of which have passed on bipartisan lines. And I want to read something that Congressman Raskin wrote when he voted for the bill. And he said, "I'm voting yes." He says, "The resolution repeatedly condemns all political violence, extremism, and hatred in unequivocal terms. It's a very positive thing to get our colleagues, Republicans and Democrats alike, on record condemning these dangerous forces when we hear so many outrageous calls to polarization, demonization, censorship, hatred, violence, and division, often coming from the highest levels of government, where we should expect ethically and morally grounded leadership." So just to my colleagues here, I didn't put this in because I'm a huge follower of everything that's controversial. I put it in because I saw an opportunity where we can condemn political violence. And I think people should be able to speak what's on their mind, even if we disagree. And I think as a country and as a political organization, we'd be better off for it. So for that, I hope everyone will keep an open mind and give a favorable on this resolution. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Yes, Delegate Wilkins, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for recognizing me. And let me start by saying that violence has no place in United States politics, whether it is January 6, 2021, that attack on the U.S. Capitol, or the brutal attack of Paul Pelosi, former U.S. Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, at their San Francisco home in 2020, the domestic terror plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020, the murder of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman in 2025 or the murder of Charlie Kirk. I unequivocally condemn political violence in all its forms and extend my thoughts and prayers to Charlie Kirk's children and loved ones. But Delegate Pippi, I do believe that we can condemn the murder of a person while taking issue with their views. And one view that I find problematic that comes to mind is a comment that if I see a Black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Delegate, do you know who made this statement?
Well, I'm assuming you spent the weekend Googling controversial Charlie Kirk memes and phrases. I will tell you, Delegate, that's why in my presentation I said that this was not put in for any controversial statements that were made. It was put in to condemn political violence. That's why your federal representative voted for the resolution.
Delegate,
That's
can you
why
answer my question,
Angela
please?
Alsobrooks voted for it.
Can you please
Chris Van
answer my
Hollen.
question? Madam Chair, I believe that in our hearings, we get to ask questions of the sponsors and that they respond to the question. And my question is in regards to this resolution honoring Charlie Kirk. My question is, if I see a Black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. And the question that I have for you, Delegate, is since this resolution is honoring Charlie Kirk, is if you associate yourself with this statement.
I don't associate myself with any controversial statements.
Okay, thank
The
you,
resolution
Delegate.
was
The
put
next
in.
one.
Okay, all right.
Well, first of all, Madam Chair,
You can certainly finish your thought, but I
Okay.
don't want it to go back
Sure.
and forth and back.
Sure,
and
I'll finish my thought. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as a member of this committee, I'm obviously familiar with the rules of the committee, but in my intro, I said that clearly, I'm sure this individual has said controversial things in the past, but that's not why the resolution was put in, and that's not why the majority of the Democrats that represent Maryland voted for it, is because we're condemning political violence, but to the specific question, listen, anything inappropriate or controversial that was said, I don't agree with. That's not how I roll. That's not how I participate as a legislator. You guys know that. But, happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My second point, and then I will conclude, is a second very important quote that I think is really important to raise as part of the record when it comes to Charlie Kirk and our consideration of this resolution. If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called racists. Now they're coming out and saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here for affirmative action. These women do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to be taken somewhat seriously. This was on the Charlie Kirk show, said by Charlie Kirk on July 13th, 2023. And we know, Delegate, that Joy Reid is a prominent television host who earned her undergraduate degree from Harvard University. Michelle Obama, outside of being a former First Lady of the United States, is a highly accomplished attorney and author who attended Princeton University and Harvard Law School. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, may she rest in peace, was a prominent congresswoman elected for almost 30 years who attended NYU, transferred to Yale, and later attended UVA Law School. Ketanji Brown Jackson earned her degree from Harvard University for her undergraduate degree, as well as Harvard Law School, and went on to become the first Black female Supreme Court Justice of the United States. So
I'm sorry, is there a question?
I raise these, and I'm getting to my question, Delegate. I raise these because the subject of your bill, Charlie Kirk, seems to have an issue with qualified, well-educated, accomplished Black women.
No.
And I once again ask you, because you're asking us to honor this individual, and as a Black woman myself, and many Black women who are members of this committee, I ask you if you associate yourself with these comments of the person that you are requesting that we honor as members of the General Assembly.
So Matt, I'm not sure if you were paying attention during my introduction, but none of my presentation or resolution deals with any of those controversial statements. It's about condemning political violence, and that's why Senator Angela Alsobrooks also voted for this verbatim resolution. Verbatim. So I'm not sure if you asked Senator Angela Alsobrooks those same questions. I'm not sure if they were asked of her when she voted for it. I'm not sure. But I'm not going to stick up for every controversial thing someone has said. This is about condemning political violence. If you would like to turn it into something else, Delegate Wilkins, that's not why I'm here. But I certainly don't associate myself or agree with anything that is controversial. That's not why it was put in. It was put in to condemn political violence. That was the presentation.
Okay.
And if you heard something else, then I apologize to you.
Okay, there are other questions, Delegate Pippi?
Thank you, Delegate, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Wilkins, thank you so much for your questions. We're going to move on to a few more questions from members of the committee. Delegate Cullison. Delegate Cullison, you have a question? You're on mute.
Yeah, Delegate Healy, I think that Chair Wilson was on was first.
I'm sorry, I didn't see his hand, but you want to go now or you want to wait?
Well, since I have the floor, I apologize, Delegate Wilson. I'm going to ask the sponsor, since the bill is really about condemning political violence, would you be open to removing all references to Charlie Kirk from this joint resolution?
So I am certainly respectful of the committee process, and if the committee feels that that's what they would like to do, I'm certainly open to any amendment. Again, the purpose of this was, and I'll just say it, I'll be just straight up. When I read I was never, I didn't know much about Charlie Kirk, honestly, until he was assassinated. But then what I liked was that after it happened, I saw a rare moment of nonpartisanship. I saw Republicans and Democrats coming together to condemn political violence. And that's why I took, Delegate Coulson, a verbatim resolution from Congress and introduced it because I thought the same thing would happen here. It was not my intent to turn this into a political who can Google controversial statements by people in the past. That wasn't the intent of it. It was to condemn political violence. So if there's an amendment by the committee that wants to just hyper focus on that item, I'm certainly open to it.
I guess I'm not sure how hyper focusing on the person who is most controversial takes away from your commitment to condemning political violence. But
well, you're asking if would I be open to, first of all, I think it's somewhat disrespectful because Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was assassinated. But using the words of Jamie Raskin, right, who's the representative of many people on this committee who voted for this bill and spoke out in favor of the bill, is that the focus of the resolution is on condemning political violence. Yes, there's a couple references in there that Charlie Kirk was a Christian, which is true. Charlie Kirk has a wonderful family, which is true. Charlie Kirk founded Turning Point, which is true. And Charlie Kirk's a fan of the Constitution, which is true. That's it. Everything else is about condemning political violence. I realize it's an election year and people want to turn this into something else. But I'm telling you, my focus is on condemning political violence. And unfortunately, Charlie Kirk was killed for merely speaking his views, controversial or not. And there's nothing in this resolution that says his views are the way it should be. It just gives the facts. He was born on this date. He founded this organization. He would speak on college campuses. And then he was killed for it. And I think that's something we could all get behind and condemn.
Okay, Delegate, I'm sorry, are you finished, Delegate Cullison?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, yes.
And hopefully
Okay,
I answered your question about if there's an amendment or a suggestion that is the will of the committee, I would certainly consider it.
Delegate Wilson, sorry, I didn't see your hand earlier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No worries. Delegate Pippi, and I know I guess I have to clarify because honestly, when I heard you present the bill, I had to pull it up because the bill that you discussed definitely wasn't what I read. And I said that because we've been friends a long time, you and I. I hope you can understand from the very title of the bill, which basically says honoring Charlie Kirk. It doesn't say despising political violence. It is a bill, and the first dozen whereabouts or whereases are about Charlie Kirk. So this bill is not about political violence. It's about Charlie Kirk the way I read it. Number one. Two, I do hope you understand again, because I'm not asking you to accept any of his views at all. I've known you for a long time. I think you're a good man. But when you say about, oh, going to Google, I didn't have to Google. I have this in my phone because I hear it. And as I hear it, I paid attention. This is from back in the day when he's talking about on the Charlie Kirk show, January 2024. So what I did Google was the exact time he said it, not so much what he said, because I had that in my phone. If I'm dealing with somebody at customer service who is a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? Or when he says on March 2020 or March 20th, 2024, the Democratic Party hates this country. They want to see it collapse. They love it when America becomes less white. And he goes on to talk about the replacement theory. I hope that you could understand, as an African American with 3 African American children, hearing him say we made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the mid-60s would be patently offensive to me, because the bill is, again, honoring Charlie Kirk. And it goes on to talk about Charlie Kirk. It does tap around political violence. And again, I know we don't like talking bad about the dead, as you said, the disrespect because he was assassinated. But he did carve Martin Luther King in December 2023 at the America First convention. Basically, a horrible person. So he was an awful person. I'm sorry, that was in 2023. So I hope you understand, as an African American, when he's bad-mouthing the Civil Rights Act, some of our great leaders, denigrating black women, African Americans, period, because I've always wondered with that statement. So if he saw a black lawyer in court, would he also think that I was unqualified? So the question is, I hope you understand how some of us could be patently opposed to this bill as written. Secondly, when we talk about this, about him and the nonviolence, in October 3rd, 31st, 2022, there was an attack on Paul Pelosi, and he said it wasn't right. And then he asked, why hasn't he been bailed out? If some amazing patriot in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to be a midterm hero, they should bail him out. That's direct political violence. Saying that, and I quote, Islam is the sword of the left. It is using to slit the throats of American. That was stated on the 8th of September, 2025. I need you to understand, this is not, the way the bill is written, it's not about political violence. This is about honoring Charlie Kirk. And whatever Congress did, God bless them, but I did not want this record to go unclear as to the way this bill is written. And your presentation was amazing. I do not disagree, but I disagree wholeheartedly with the bill, because he did not stand against political violence. He advocated it. He wanted them to bail out the person who attacked Paul Pelosi. He denigrates African Americans. And here's the thing about controversy. We can understand controversy, but I want you, as my friend, delegate, to understand why I am patently opposed to any kind of honorific title for a man who denigrated our dead leaders, attacked African Americans, and basically helped drive that wedge in our community. I don't see him as a peaceful person. And just because you go to a college campus and pick on a lot of, kids in school, that doesn't make you a hero. And what you're doing here today is trying to make him a hero. And I don't know what Congress does, and I don't know if they read the bills, and I'm not going to speak for our senators or congressmen, but I personally would be damned if I thought that this was the proper way to approach contesting political violence, by honoring somebody who rewarded political violence. So I do hope you understand, because I know you, and I think you're a great man and a good friend. I hope you stand as an African American with 3 African American daughters, how the things you've heard him say, it's hypocritical to what we're doing today. And I have no intent on supporting this bill, passing this bill. And I do appreciate you as a person. And again, what you presented was phenomenal. But that's not what this bill did. And that's not what this bill does. And I refuse to honor a man who helped drive a wedge between my people, my community, and everyone around. So thank you very much, sir. I hope you do understand.
All right, was that a
I was just
that a
hoping you would
question?
understand. I was explaining my point of view, and I was
Okay.
hoping that you would understand, and this would not be you considered an ad hominem attack to you.
Okay. Madam Chair, I don't know if am I allowed to respond to that or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you may respond.
Okay. So I'm just going to say it again for the record. So I didn't concoct this out of my basement in Frederick. I took a resolution verbatim that was passed in the United States Congress, and C.T. Wilson's congressman voted for it. So did Jamie Raskin. So did Angela Alsobrooks. I hate to think that I don't assume those are racist people. I didn't hear any questioning of their motives for supporting that resolution. I didn't hear anyone questioning their integrity for supporting that resolution. Matter of fact, it seems like the entire Democrat leadership in Washington supported this verbatim. I get it. He has said some controversial things. You guys probably know more about it than I do because I wasn't exactly a follower of his until I saw him get assassinated on TV. And then I thought that was horrible. We all thought that was horrible. And what I liked afterwards was that it appeared that both Republicans and Democrats were willing to come together to say that political violence is wrong no matter who it's to, who it's for. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. I get it. You don't like the title. If you want to change the title, I'm open to that. If you want to just say this is a resolution condemning political violence per Delegate Collison, let's do it. I don't want to turn this into a political back and forth because that's not why I put it in. I thought it would be a good thing to do what other folks have done, which is, again, condemning political. And the guy died. It's not like he was assassinated. He's gone, so, But I appreciate the feedback. I certainly understand that Mr. Kirk may have said some controversial things in the past, but here's the deal. We're all in politics. People say controversial things, and it doesn't give you the right to kill them. And I think that's the overarching message here is that no matter what the beliefs are, whether we agree or disagree, this is a country that does have freedom of speech. And we should not be encouraging people or allowing someone to be killed just for their beliefs. And I think that's the overarching message. And that's why I read the quote from Congressman Raskin. So you're not taking my words for it. You're taking the words of somebody maybe that you more politically align with. But to the committee, if you want to change the name of the title and move it, go for it. But I thought I presented my case well, and certainly open for any other questions from the committee.
Madam Chair, just a brief follow-up.
Okay, yes, Delegate Wilson,
So
go ahead.
knowing everything you've heard Mr. Kirk say, and all the quotes that you didn't Google, but I guess other people did, would you still support this bill in its current form, knowing the racist and denigrating things that he has said?
Delegate Wilson, there is nothing in this resolution that says that anything controversial he has said we're supporting. The resolution talks about condemning political violence. I even wrote the part referencing Mr. Kirk just gives the facts. He was born in 1993. He has a family. He started Turning Point. It just gives the facts. He likes the Constitution. Those are all facts. It doesn't say anything about his controversial statements. It doesn't condone. That's the point. This is not condoning things he said. This is condemning.
Okay.
We don't get to separate the two, sir. We don't get to separate the two, and that's the problem. We can't pretend those things didn't happen just because of the situation, sir. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. There are additional questions. Delegate Bagnall. Did I miss anybody who was in the queue? Because I did that once already. I think Delegate Bagnall is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think you have another hand from Delegate Wilkins. But I'll make my comments very brief. First of all, thank you to the sponsor for your explanation. I think Delegate Wilson made it clear that your explanation and the bill that we're looking at before us don't quite align. And to your point, I have actually reached out to my representatives and asked them about their vote, and they did speak to some of the things that were in the resolution, like lines, where was it, on page 2, lines 27 through 30. No, sorry, not 27 through 30. Where is it? 13 through 15, leaders at every level, government, education, media, and beyond, must stand united in unequivocal condemnation of political violence, regardless of their ideology. On page 3, lines 4 through 6, that the General Assembly calls upon all Americans, regardless of race, party affiliation, or creed, to reject political violence. So reviewing the legislation as you have explained it versus the language we see before us, I believe if we were to amend the bill to simply have on page 1, line 1, on page 2, lines 7 through 9, 10 through 12, and 13 through 15, and on page 3, lines 4 through 6, that would actually that would get to the bill as you explained it to us, without making references to a controversial figure who you explained you weren't attempting to honor, but was in the original language. So would you be amenable to us amending the resolution as I have explained it?
Sure. Well, I just want to correct the record. So I'm not dishonoring Charlie Kirk. He was assassinated for merely speaking his mind, and I think that is absolutely wrong. The second point, and I just want to make this clear, is I did not create this resolution. I took the resolution from the one that your Congresswoman Sarah Elfreth passed.
And I believe I spoke to that.
You did.
I did not say that you were dishonoring, and I did not say that you were that you had crafted this. That I actually did say that you took the language from the bill that I reached out to my representatives on. So I don't believe you need to correct the record on that. Yeah. I just wanted to ask if you would be amenable to us amending the bill as you had explained it in your.
So Chair Bagnall, I will say the same thing to you as I said to Delegate Collison, is if the will of the committee is to amend the bill, to pass it, to condemn political violence, I'm certainly open to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you both very much for the conversation. Delegate Wilkins, you had your hand up. Did you change your mind?
Madam Chair, I had put my hand down, but just for the record, I do want to be clear that the way that this House resolution is being described and what is actually in the words of the resolution are not the same. This resolution is called Honoring Charlie Kirk. I count about 21 paragraphs in this resolution, and all but 6 of those paragraphs speak to Charlie Kirk. This is not a resolution that is about condemning political violence as a whole. If that was the whole and the point of the resolution, we would all be 100% on board. And once again, I do condemn his assassination. So for the record, I just want to be extremely clear that the content of this resolution is not the same, Delegate, as the way that you are the way that you are describing it. This is not Washington, D.C., where this was passed in, I believe, the weeks after the assassination. And I am unequivocally opposed to the content of this House Joint Resolution 1 titled Honoring Charlie Kirk. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any other further questions or comments on this? If not, I have a couple things I would like to say. Number one, I want to thank Delegate Pippi for bringing this before us with the presentation that he made. I think that we all are opposed to political violence of any kind. I do wonder about, like most people, I think a lot of people never heard of Charlie Kirk till after he was murdered. And so it took us a while to find out more about who he was and what he stood for and all of those things. In the heat of the moment, the shock of it certainly was a horrible thing. And he no one should be murdered for what they think, what they speak, what they say, no matter how disgusting it may be. That is part of the freedom of press, freedom of expression that we have in this country that makes us different from most places in the world, where people are free to say even the most hateful things. It doesn't mean that we need to honor them. And so I just wanted to give you my personal perspective and from the perspective of this committee that we have listened carefully, we have discussed it, and this concludes the hearing on House Joint Resolution 1. I want to take a short break right now. We're going to go next in a minute to re-refer a number of bills to the standing committees that have requested them. But before I do that, I also want to let people know, and especially anyone watching, that the House of Delegates will not be meeting today. The floor session has been canceled for today because of the weather dangers, and we don't want people risking themselves to get here for that. So, but we will be meeting on the floor tomorrow morning earlier at 9 o'clock instead of at the normal time of 10. And just in case other people have not yet heard that. Now, Delegate Holmes has the list of re-referrals, I believe, and he's going to read them off, and we will refer them to the appropriate committees that have requested them. Delegate Holmes.
Madam Chair, I move the following bills to the appropriate committee. HB 1596, HB 1604, HB 1605, HB 1609, HB 1611, HB 1619, HB 1626, HB 1628, HB 1634, HB 1631, and HB 1644, Madam Chair.
Thank you. It's been properly moved. Is there a second to re-refer? Somebody?
Second.
Oh, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the re-referrals, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no so I can hear you.
Madam Chair, it's Delegate Kipke. Because I can't process all of those that quickly, I'd like to abstain.
All right, Delegate Kipke abstains on all of the re-referrals. Anything else? Anyone else? All right, the bills are re-referred. They will be read across the desk tomorrow. Anything else for the good of the group? If not, we will adjourn, and hope everybody has a good day and stay safe and out of the weather.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.